Welcome to the deep dive. You know that feeling, that sort of underlying hum of stress,
hmm
the moments of anxiety, maybe even sometimes a persistent sense that something is well off.
Yeah, I think a lot of us know that feeling.
We're all navigating a world that, let's face it, often feels like a lot. So today we're tackling that head on. Why does modern life so frequently feel this way?
A really universal experience, isn't it? You hear it everywhere.
Yeah,
Conversations about, you know, strained relationships, the sheer pressure from work.
the constant demands.
Exactly. Or that quiet sense of disappointment that can creep into our closest connections, the complexities within families.
And maybe underneath it all,
Yeah, that fundamental human thing, wanting to feel truly valued, truly loved for who we are. All these individual struggles, they seem to point towards something bitter, maybe.
exactly. And that's where we want to focus our energy today. We've got some really interesting material here that shines a light on what could be a central cause. This surprisingly narrow, kind of restrictive idea our society tends to push about what a good life actually looks like.
Ah, right. The sort of prescribed path.
Mm.
We're going to dig into the specifics of this limited viewpoint, look at the unspoken rules it kind of imposes on us,
And crucially,
and importantly, consider how this very path might be fueling a lot of the anxieties we're talking about.
so yeah, get ready to maybe look at things a little differently. We're going to unpack this good life myth, see where it might be holding us, holding you back, and explore some really interesting ideas about how we can maybe step away from those pressures.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's jump in. What exactly are we talking about when we say this narrow good life myth? Like, what are its key ingredients?
Well, at its heart, it's this deeply ingrained societal story, isn't it?
Mhm.
The one that equates a valuable life almost exclusively with external achievements.
Okay, like what specifically?
Think high-powered careers, significant professional recognition,
Mm,
the idealized family structure, that kind of
the
thing.
picture perfect image.
Exactly. Often presented as the essential markers of a life well lived, the benchmarks we all implicitly measure ourselves against.
And what happens when we really buy into that definition? It sounds like a recipe for just constant pressure.
Oh, it absolutely is. It fosters this perpetual state of striving, you know, a relentless drive to compete, to achieve more.
We're always pushing.
There's this unspoken pressure to always be on, to feel like we're not allowed to pause or step back, even when we're feeling completely drained.
Yeah, rest feels almost forbidden sometimes.
The whole system often feels like it discourages it, yeah.
Right. And the societal pushback, if you try to step off that track, it's powerful. The source material we're looking at gives some really clear examples of how we sort of police this in each other. If someone even hints at wanting something different.
Exactly. Consider someone wanting to maybe reduce their work hours or pivot to a less demanding career, or even just take a proper break for their well-being. The immediate reactions can be incredibly judgmental. You hear labels like lazy or, oh, they've given up, or what a waste of potential. They can surface really quickly. It's a
Wow.
really potent form of social regulation.
And it goes beyond just career paths, too, right? The material also mentions the judgments people face if they don't follow this sort of conventional relationship or family timelines.
Precisely.
Yeah.
People who choose not to marry or maybe choose not to have children, they can get labeled weird or broken or even immature.
As if something's wrong with them.
Yeah, it creates this sense that deviating from that traditional path signifies some kind of fundamental flaw.
Mm.
And these aren't just casual opinions. They carry real social weight.
And what's so damaging, I think, is how we take those external messages and just internalize them. It stops being just pressure from others,
Mm-hmm.
and it starts shaping our own self-perception, leading to real self-doubt, that nagging feeling of failure if we don't measure up to these external standards.
That's it exactly.
Yeah.
Constant exposure to these societal expectations, it kind of creates this internal critic, doesn't it?
Yeah, that little voice.
That voice that reinforces the idea that, we're not good enough if we're not following the prescribed path. It chips away at our self-esteem and makes it even harder to even consider alternatives.
Which, according to our source here, can actually evolve into a really profound kind of fear. It's not just about social disapproval anymore, is it? It goes deeper.
No, it taps into something more fundamental, a more basic anxiety. It's the feeling that not keeping pace, not achieving those externally validated markers of success, somehow equates to a basic failure to Well, to thrive.
Even if it's symbolic survival now.
Right, even if that survival is largely symbolic in our modern world, it triggers these deep-seated insecurities about our worth, our place.
But the really key takeaway from this piece, the really empowering idea, I think, is that this whole framework, this idea of a single correct way to live,
Yeah.
it's actually just a construct. It's not reality.
Precisely. The source really emphasizes that there isn't one singular right way to live a meaningful life. In fact, this rigid adherence to a one-size-fits-all model is what actively prevents us from experiencing genuine ease and, real joy.
Okay, so we've kind of unpacked the problem, this restrictive, often anxiety-inducing definition of a good life. Now, our source offers a couple of really interesting shifts in perspective, ways to help us move away from this. The first one centers around letting go of unnecessary desires. What's the core idea there?
The fundamental insight is that a significant source of our stress comes from the sheer weight of what we constantly want.
Okay.
The source uses a really evocative comparison. When adult life feels overwhelming, we often find ourselves, longing for the simplicity of childhood.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
And if you think about it, why is that? Usually because as children, our needs and desires were comparatively few, much simpler.
That's so true. A sense of security, some playtime, maybe a favorite snack, that really was the essence of contentment back then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the crucial point the source makes is that at our core, we don't actually require nearly as much as we've been conditioned to believe to live well.
So a lot of what we chase.
Many of the things we chase in modern life, the latest fashion trends, the most advanced gadgets, status-boosting possessions, they aren't inherent necessities.
So these are more like culturally implanted aspirations, things society tells us we should want.
Precisely. The source even calls them desires that society planted in us. And think about the pervasive influence of social media here.
Oh, definitely.
We're constantly bombarded with these highly curated, seemingly perfect lives, right? Filled with material goods, exotic trips.
Yeah, the highlight reel.
And this can easily trigger a sense of inadequacy in our own lives.
Yeah.
We start to feel like we need those things too, even if they don't genuinely align with our personal values or, frankly, bring us any lasting satisfaction.
It plays on that comparison thing.
Absolutely. That social comparison theory, we naturally evaluate ourselves against others, and it often leads to feeling deficient.
So the strategy then is to consciously try and detach from these externally driven desires. What's the payoff?
It leads to a lighter existence, really. Fewer things to pursue, fewer things to worry about acquiring and then maintaining, less clutter, both physically and mentally.
Less stress.
Ultimately, yeah, it reduces stress. The source makes a really powerful observation that a huge chunk of our emotional distress comes from this constant state of wanting, this persistent feeling of not having enough.
And the alternative, as the piece suggests, is to cultivate contentment. It almost positions it as like a radical act in today's world.
It is, in many ways. In a culture that constantly screams more, better, latest, finding genuine satisfaction in just enough.
Instead of everything.
Right, instead of everything. That becomes a real source of inner strength, a kind of superpower, as the source puts it. It's about intentionally shifting our focus from what we think we lack to appreciating the abundance that's already here.
Okay, that's a really significant shift. Now, the second key idea the source presents is this concept of returning to who you really are. This sounds like it gets right to the heart of living authentically.
It really does. The source introduces this compelling idea of two lives.
Mhm.
The first, it suggests, is the one we often live trying to please others.
Yeah.
Trying to meet all those external expectations.
Right, the performance life.
Kinda, yeah. But the second life, which is where true freedom lies, that begins when we prioritize living in accordance with our own authentic selves.
So this second life is about shedding that need for external validation and defining what success looks like for us, not just following some prepackaged definition.
Exactly that. It's about recognizing that what brings fulfillment and meaning to one person can be completely different for another. The source gives some good examples.
Right.
Like someone who genuinely dislikes highly competitive environments isn't necessarily lazy or lacking ambition. It simply might not be aligned with their natural inclinations. Or someone who really values, say, autonomy, creative expression, quiet reflection, a deep connection with nature, or maybe just the simpler way of life. They shouldn't feel forced to chase a high-pressure corporate career just because it's conventionally seen as successful.
It's about giving ourselves permission to have different priorities, isn't it? Even if they deviate from the widely accepted norms, the fancy degrees, the prestigious job titles, the suburban house with the perfect lawn. if those things don't actually resonate with us?
Precisely. And the source touches upon that internal conflict we often feel, the tension between different parts of ourselves.
The shoulds versus the wants.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
It alludes to the interplay between our deeply held values, our genuine desires, and all those external pressures we feel. And when those external pressures, the superego, maybe become too dominant,
They drown out the real you.
they can overshadow our authentic selves, exactly, leading to that sense of unease, that dissatisfaction, because we're not living in alignment with what truly matters to us.
And when those external shoulds get too loud, they essentially mute our inner voice, leading to that pervasive feeling of something being amiss.
Exactly. Nothing feels quite right because we're living a life shaped by external rules rather than our own internal guidance. The key, the source argues, is to consciously prioritize listening to ourselves.
Trusting our own compass.
Yes, relying on our own internal compass rather than constantly seeking external approval or validation.
It's about granting ourselves that fundamental freedom from those externally imposed definitions of success and embracing the full spectrum of human experiences.
Yes,
Why?
life isn't some rigid, predetermined path. It's fluid, it changes, and it's absolutely okay to adjust our course along the way.
Yeah.
The source reminds us that life involves transitions, changes in relationships, career shifts, new beginnings. These are all valid, natural parts of being human. There isn't one single correct way to navigate it all.
And even the tough stuff, the difficult experiences, the unexpected detours and challenges.
They all contribute. They shape a richer, more nuanced understanding of ourselves and the world. They build depth.
So it's not just about the wins.
Absolutely not. It's about recognizing the inherent value in all aspects of our journey, not just the ones that fit neatly into that narrow definition of success. And the piece concludes with a really empathetic and direct message.
For who?
For anyone listening who's been feeling a sense of disorientation, maybe exhaustion, or just feeling stuck.
It essentially frames this whole discussion as an invitation, doesn't it? A moment to just pause, take a breath,
Yes.
and ask ourselves that essential question. What kind of life do I truly want to live, independent of all the external noise and expectations?
Precisely. It's an encouragement to reconnect with our most authentic selves and to start building a life that's grounded in our own unique values and aspirations, not some prescribed societal ideal.
So to bring it all together then, this deep dive into our source material really highlights that these widespread feelings of stress, anxiety, and modern life, they can be significantly linked to holding onto a very narrow, often unspoken, societal blueprint for a good life.
Yeah, and the journey towards feeling better, towards greater peace and well-being, it involves a pretty fundamental shift in perspective. It seems to center on two core ideas we discussed.
Which are?
Consciously releasing the burden of unnecessary, externally driven desires.
Letting go of the wants.
Right. And actively reconnecting with and honoring our authentic selves, our own unique values and dreams.
Returning to you. Okay, and on that note, here's something for you, the listener, to really think about. What is one societal expectation, maybe big, maybe small, that you might be unconsciously striving to meet right now?
Good question.
And more importantly, take a moment to ask. Does it genuinely resonate with your own deepest desires and values? It's definitely a question worth exploring. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.